Welcome to the Get Offset podcast. My name is Emily.
And I'm Joan of Heart.
And we had some technical difficulties, but we're here, and that's what matters.
Yes, it is. And we have our logo displayed right here. And me, like Vanna White, I'm just going to show it off.
I think there's also going to be a logo down, like, there in the far corner on YouTube. Yeah, it's
Where
down
it
there.
is right now. There we go.
Yeah, so that's ish. And if you click on that one, you can subscribe to the channel.
Oh, shit. Subscribe.
And everyone who's listening is like, shut the fuck up about things that we can't see.
Yeah. Stuff and things and stuff. I mean,
Yep.
if you can't see any of these things, know that as we describe them, they are there floating in your imagination. Imagine them.
Yeah, we had latency is a bitch, let me tell you.
Totally.
We were having some latency issues. In case if you watched or listened to last week's episode, apparently Joe and I were on like a 3-second latency thing, which is too much latency.
Yeah, I would clap and it would be like, have you clapped yet? And I'm like, yes.
Yeah, I'd be like, we go 1, 2, 3, clap so we can sync. And then I'd clap and I'd be like, are you
doing anything?
Are you still not hearing it? And Joe's like, Joe hears, okay, now on 3, and I've already clapped. I'm like, oh my God.
I swear I have rhythm. I can hit a beat, I swear.
Oof. I think I made my husband mad a few weeks ago, and I was trying to like learn a solo in a different key. I'm like, can you just play this chord progression on an acoustic guitar? And he's just like going, I'm like, we got to work on your rhythm, baby.
Aww.
I'm like, I just kept looking at him and saying, it's a 2-step. He's like, I just don't know what the rhythm pattern, like, it's a 2-step. And he just like blank,
yeah. It's all right. Some of us have been there. I totally relate with him. I've had moments where they're like, yeah, it's this. And I'm like, yes.
It's almost like it works. You know, people talk about like you have to have the vocabulary in music so you can communicate with each other. It kind of also works the other way. I think that there's a point where your vocabulary gets it, if it's so much more advanced, not even so much more, but if it's like a little bit more advanced to the point where you're struggling to like explain it in smaller terms. Like I was like 1 2 1 2 1 2 da, 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 da. That can be about as confusing.
Yeah, it can be frustrating because, of course, both parties want to work together, but you have the person going, "Okay, I'm really going layman's terms with you, and you're still not getting it. How do we navigate this now?" The other person is trying too. They're like, "I'm trying. It's just, the brain is like,
Yeah. What I've realized this doesn't have though is it doesn't have like a countdown timer. Oh, there it is. I'm like, you get new software. You're like, where is things?
Where's the countdown? The final countdown.
Speaking of final countdowns, it's the final countdown for Fulltone, apparently.
Yes.
Yes, we didn't know if it was real for a few days because there didn't seem to be like an official statement. But I think it really became real when people saw that the Fulltone building was listed for sale, and it said at the bottom, employees do not know, do not approach employees, which I've learned is just kind of like they'll say that regardless of whether or not that's true, just because they don't want people going there and harassing employees anyway, which is stupid that you would have to say that.
Yeah.
But so we don't know. We don't know if his employees knew it was going to be sold and ending. I sure as shit hope so.
I hope so too, because I've known people who have been in situations where the bar is closed or lounge that they're working at, and they did not get any kind of heads up that things were closing. They were just all fired one day, and to now have to go navigate looking for a job with no notice, that's extremely scary. That is, that's an asshole who does that.
That would be a real dick move, as the kids say. But yeah, so I mean, I hope that they had some warning.
I hope so.
But the letter Fulltone put out, it's a doozy.
Oh God, yes.
It starts normal. It's like, with a heavy heart, I announced that Fulltone is ending, closing its doors in California, which feels important to me. After 30 years, the building is up for sale. Myself and my crew want to thank you. Don't feel sorry for me, it literally says.
I don't.
I have made mistakes and learned a lot over 30 years. My heavy heart is for my employees who are like family. I would have closed Fulltone years ago if not for them.
Okay, that's nice. I mean, it's going from kind of like a was it a good right now, like lawful good, like I'm doing, this thing and we're closing and my employees help me get along, but it will soon go into a chaotic evil diatribe as we progress.
I think it starts with that last line. I would have closed Fulltone years ago if not for
Yeah.
my employees. Okay.
Yeah.
Weird to
Weird
say.
ending there.
Ish,
Yeah.
ish. And then it says, I've done well financially, thanks in part to you and to the many large years in the roaring 2000s and beyond, plus real estate and some good investments. So it's time to enjoy the fruits of that labor. I mean, that's fair, but also overshare a
Yeah.
little bit.
A little
A
bit.
little
A
bit.
little bit braggadocious in a way, if I
Yeah.
can say that.
I'm closing the Fulltone California shop because I will not start pumping my personal money into a business that no longer turns a profit. Okay. I mean, it's
Mhm.
nobody should be forced to put their own money into a business, but that's also kind of part of being a business owner. I
Yeah.
think if you're a business owner, you're very much responsible for your employees.
Yeah.
Um, but it's people should, they have their own decisions. He's been obviously in business for 30 years. It's a long time to be in any business. And then he says this four and dot 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 this 4-year climate makes 100% made in the USA impossible.
What's the need to mention that? Like,
What climate?
yeah.
He doesn't really elaborate,
He's had a
but
history of being overly political though and
he's a
doubling
little.
down. Yeah. He's being a little dickish quite a bit.
That's very in character for him. He
Yes.
has always had a reputation for being prickly at best when people would have like customer service emails. He would oftentimes blame the guitarist for a pedal being loud or noisy. And albeit a lot of times, yeah, that can boil down to a power supply, which is what he seemed to blame a lot. Sometimes you gotta admit, like sometimes you
Something
sell something, it breaks.
Yeah, or also like internals can somehow degrade, or
Mm,
also like while building, you could have been multitasking and one of them just went off went into the shipment and was, subpar. I've had
yeah,
pedals like that where I've used them and over time they start to have either issues or out the box I've had to send them in and like, hey, can you fix this? Because this isn't working properly. And luckily I've
yeah.
had good experience with companies that will help me.
Yeah, because, if you're a business owner, you understand sometimes you
Yeah.
can't have a 100% success rate on your products. Like
No.
a 0% fail rate is the dream, but also relatively impossible.
Mhm.
And things can happen like cold solder, a pedal gets bumped around.
Yeah.
Guitar pedals, they are designed to go under a lot of abuse, like literally being stepped on, kind of kicked around on
Mhm.
stage, in the bottom of a tour bus
Yep.
or back of a tour van. Things get jostled, they get dropped.
No, even in
It
shipment.
happens.
Yeah,
Yeah,
even in shipment. I mean,
exactly.
the last pedal that I had to go back and forth on, I actually contacted, Chase Bliss because I was thinking my Habit was having internal clipping issues. So, between me and them, we basically went through the process of, like, recording video. "What are you doing? What's your signal chain?" And we talked through it because I said, "Hey, it could be a me problem. It could be
Yeah,
the pedal, but if you could help me source through kind of the process of figuring it out, will kind of weigh whether it's something that you would have to handle or on my end, it's something I'm doing." So I appreciate the
yeah.
scenario that someone will walk you through it like that. I mean,
I remember once I tried
yeah.
to do that with a guy who bought a pedal from me on Reverb, and he just
Oh, I remember
refused.
that. That was horrible. Yeah, that was an asshole.
Just friendly reminder, if you have an envelope filter pedal, you need to actually have a decent amount of input signal going into the
Yeah.
pedal. I don't know why this guy didn't wanna just, like, turn his amp down, but he turned the volume down on his bass instead. I'm like,
No, that then the input, yeah, that's not gonna get the signal and not
"Yeah."
going to the envelope filter is gonna have nothing to latch onto or to react to.
Yeah, so, with that in mind, I highly recommend, yeah, double checking your
Troubleshoot.
pedals.
Yeah, troubleshoot
Somebody to work
yourself.
with you, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I think a lot of people do that, some people don't know how, but that we're getting farther away from it.
Hmm.
So, the next thing he says is, "Fulltone will remain a valid corporation. I'll continue to vigorously defend my $3 million worth of worldwide trademarks and patents, and we
Sounds
will build a
Gibson-y.
few pedals here and there as I'm vividly aware of what it takes to keep my brand from being stolen. So, for people who don't really know much about trademark law, to keep a trademark active, it has to actually be active. You can abandon a trademark just by not using it for a while, which Gibson learned with the recent cornet and satellite amps stuff. They didn't publicly manufacture coronets for a long period of time. The trademark expired. Satellite purchased it after trying to talk to Gibson, and then Gibson wanted it back. And then they said, "Oh, we were actually making coronets in the custom shop." Um, so the trademark is still valid. But you have to continuously protect your trademarks and equitably protect your trademarks. You can't
Of course.
just let it slide with some people. A lot of times a cease and desist letter is the start of a conversation, or at least a way for you to prove I've been trying to protect
Hey,
my
yeah. Mhm.
trademark. Because sometimes you get that cease and desist, and what you work out is, yes, just keep using it, but we just needed to do this.
Yeah, or like your design is fine, you just need to change the headstock. Like it needs to not look
Yeah.
like this. You're allowed to make the rest of the design, just please change that. And they're like, "Okay, yeah,
Oh.
I will." Like
If they're,
if they're
they know
reasonable.
it's good for them.
Yeah.
So that it's kind of interesting. People were making the point that kind of sounds like he wants to be an IP troll, and they're a patent troll. So a patent troll is somebody who just owns a bunch of patents for very vague things and works really hard to enforce them and get paid whenever
I know.
they can.
Mm,
And there's some really famous patent trolls in the world. And patent trolls are bad for advancement because
innovation, yeah. Mhm.
they'll take a very vague uh, thing that they patented that probably never should have been given a patent in the first place. And then they sue everybody. Like there was a case with a patent troll, and this patent basically would have prevented I think the patent was almost for sending electronic communications.
Mm,
It was something very widely used like that, and eventually someone was able to basically get that patent, um, uh,
work through,
thrown
yeah.
out.
Mm,
They threw it out because the person who filed the patent wasn't actually a part of the creation process anyway.
okay.
So, that was my hair is kind of getting weird with my IMs. But yeah, so it sounds like he's going to go after people who, like, rip off his branding,
I hear
try
you.
to take advantage.
If he's going after people that are using Comic Sans, I mean, I think that would be the greater good of everyone to stop using that font, please.
I would yeah, no. You can't and that's the thing, like,
You can't.
you can't trademark a font that
No, you can't.
widely exists.
No. No,
You
that's
just
it.
can't.
So many people have tried. They've tried, but you
Really?
can't. Yeah, people
Oh,
have
it's
tried.
stupid.
Yeah,
That's
it
so
is.
dumb. But, yeah, so, I assume that he's going to try to find whatever ways he can, and, so maybe think twice before making a blatant OCD ripoff, or don't, I don't care.
Do you
Then it
think
gets oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna like, do you think in any vein that he may be trying to make an approach of doing it himself and having a long waiting list like, Analog
Analog
Man
Man.
does and trying to be exclusive and a long waiting list and everyone clamoring to get it from him and the long wait size for the hype, you know, to I'm curious if that also is something that could be on the table for him.
I think that's possible, with custom shop stuff, maybe,
Mm,
because people who suddenly there are listings on Reverb where they're trying to sell an OCD or something one of his pedals for, a lot of money, like 500 bucks,
yeah.
forgetting that there are thousands of these pedals out there. They are not rare. It's like
No.
charging a lot of money for, like, a Behringer pedal, but, there so many people made these to the point so many people bought these pedals, I should say, to the point where, um, I think some people got really bored by the sound of it. It was the overdrive pedal for a
For a
very
while.
long
Yeah.
time. So
Mhm.
that's just a sound. And if you're trying to make your own sound, you might shy away from
Of course, you
something
may
that is
explore
widely
to
used.
other things. Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree with you.
Yeah, but that is to say that is exactly how many of these pedals are out there, that it was ever present in guitar music for 2 decades, at
That makes
least.
sense then, yeah. Maybe not so
Um,
much. Yeah.
but I know that he's mostly just been doing custom shop stuff on the website for a while now. They haven't really launched anything new in a long time other than custom shop stuff, so my guess is that's more interesting, and like, do people keep buying OCDs? Like, maybe, but with so many used ones, I would have to imagine that would affect
Yeah.
the,
You have to
amount of
explore
new ones people
other
buy.
yeah, you have to explore other ways of doing the same thing or to add some extra feature to it to make it not
Yeah.
sound like the other one or also you get bored building the same thing for so long, you'd wanna like, yeah, the custom shop makes sense. Like, you
Yeah.
wanna build things that kinda get you outside your comfort zone and into creating things that may give you life, you know what I mean, making.
Yeah, but, like, my point is more like just with how many used ones are floating around, I wonder if that
Mhm.
really had an effect on the new ones being bought. I think a lot of people did sell their OCDs or get rid of them after his comments in
Oh, yes.
2020.
Yeah.
And if you're not familiar, he just went very hard against Black Lives Matter uh, protests. And there was a woman who he left a comment on one of her posts that
Oh,
basically
yeah.
said that I would break into your house and steal your pedals because you don't deserve to own them. Uh, that was stupid.
That's yeah, like, you don't say things like that. Like, it's an obvious threat, direct threat, and to make that kind of statement regardless is yeah, that's really cringy. That's yeah, that's my thoughts.
Unhinged.
Unhinged, crazy, batshit crazy. Yes, I agree.
Yeah. Speaking of unhinged, the rest of this
Yes.
article. My plans, my wife and I bought a well-known artist 17-acre property. Already brag, like, why would you brag that's a well-known artist? Like, that's just like humble bragging. And world-class recording studio outside of Nashville. So I'm going to go back to what I'm good at, playing guitar and recording my mediocre 70s rock. And I'll do the occasional outside project, particularly for unknown talent who could never otherwise afford to record through tape machines and great digital, let alone have 99 finely tuned vintage guitars, 65 vintage amps, and a ton of the finest vintage microphones at their disposal.
So
What is
so
this?
generous. So generous, this man.
And meanwhile, my employees are now unemployed,
Yeah. While
and
I'm
because
rocking
I
with
didn't
my
want to put
vintage
more money
gear. Yeah.
because I didn't want to put more money into my own business. I really do feel like as an employer, you have a responsibility to your employees.
Yeah.
And part of that responsibility is to not sully the reputation of your brand to the point where you're putting your employees at risk. That's something that a lot of CEOs and business owners just seem to not quite get. Like, it's kind of like, it's my
There's
business.
a
I'll do what I
disconnect.
want.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you have a
Yeah.
responsibility for your employees and the business and your and any of your stakeholders, because
Yeah.
employees are stakeholders for small businesses especially. But
Yeah. Great power, great responsibility, if we want to talk.
um,
But
yeah,
most times they don't. Yeah, they don't
like
care.
my husband and I have come really close to buying things by and then we decided against it after having deposits down because the CEO was just losing their mind, and we were
Yeah.
like, I don't really like what's happening
I
with
don't really
this.
want to give him more money to keep investing in batshit crazy things that they're doing.
Yeah,
Or running at
exactly.
the mouth. Like, it doesn't matter what they say. There no consequences will find them. Like,
Yeah. And in the end, like after all this bragging, let's see. If you're looking to place a final order, be advised you may not get all of what you request. We are only selling back stocks. We'll be closing next month or two. Yada yada yada. It's time for the old guy to move out of the way and make room for the geniuses of the next, more digital generation, which feels a little pointed.
oh, bye, Felicia.
Yeah. One, not everybody who's making pedals right now, who's making interesting pedals, is going fully digital.
No.
Um, But yeah, sure, a lot of them are, and that just feels like after all that bragging to say, "Time for the old
Yeah.
guy to blah, 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 just go yell at a cloud for a while." Oh, Nashville. So I love Nashville, and then a bunch of assholes moved there, and I was like, "Oh, I made a good
Oh,
choice."
I have that same problem down here in Miami. Like every asshole from like, several places during the pandemic. I won't name them all because, I'm not about to, put a hit on anyone. But yeah, they've all moved here and we've got the worst. Not that Miami wasn't rude already, but yeah, we've gotten the worst bag of like every location now.
Mhm. Meanwhile, I think, people didn't necessarily, like, completely leave Seattle, a lot of them
Mm,
moved out to the suburbs. Were we talking on this podcast about how I read that well over half of people who bought a house during the pandemic regret it because they don't like where they bought their house? They don't like that they moved out of cities.
maybe.
I don't know, but, I mean, we thought about it, and then I'm glad that we didn't. I'm glad we didn't move out to the suburbs or the country or
Yeah.
Idaho as much as I love Boise.
Yeah. The
No.
commutes might have been longer with more people. Density would
That
be.
was the
Yeah.
thing, people, got remote-ish houses during the
Mhm.
pandemic,
I have
and
friends
then
that did that, yep.
they got called back into the office, and they're like,
Mhm.
"Ah, damn
Damn
it.
it. Yeah, damn it.
I thought I was gonna work from home forever." No.
I mean, obviously, it actually was effective, and of course, the management and those people need to obviously be valuable and watch people, so they need you in the office.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. Some people work
Mm.
better in offices. It was really hard for my husband to transition to working from home. I
Yeah,
mean.
some people do work really well around other people. I mean, I work better here as opposed to office because every office culture I've been a part of has been toxic. So I'm just like, you know what? I'll manage my own time as long as I get the shit done before the deadline. It's
Mhm.
fine.
I mean, I hated commuting,
Yeah, I
I
did
liked
too.
commuting I liked commuting on my bike, I hated driving when I drive commute, um, and I do a lot of writing all day. It's a lot
Yeah.
easier to do that when you don't have the distractions of an office,
Hmm.
but it just kinda
Or I also
depends.
don't have to navigate being nice to people that I otherwise don't really care for.
Oh my god.
Well,
Uh,
no, I mean, I've had to deal with managers that micromanage and are assholes and kind of pretend to be nice to you, but subtly they're not the nicest people.
I had people in my offices who really struggled with, reading social cues, which is not
Yeah.
necessarily their fault. I don't know if these people I'm thinking of were, like, on the spectrum or something. I think one might have been, but Lord, you had a lot. It was hard. It was a little bit hard to, like we were talking last week, sometimes it's kinda hard to be nice.
No, of
Um,
course. I
and,
loved some
yeah,
people at the office, and there's other people, like I said, I could care less about just
yeah.
because their personalities were so difficult.
Yeah, but these people though, like, I could say, "Okay, I need to get back to work now," and they would keep talking. There was one
Oh,
woman
no.
I had to physically leave the room to get her to stop talking, and she'd be talking at me as I was, like, exiting the door.
You're like,
And then,
"Okay,
like,
yeah,
I
I'm
would
going."
yeah, so I would, like, go to the bathroom or go take a lap around the building.
She would follow you?
No, she wouldn't follow me, but that is,
Okay.
like, the amount of time that was necessary for her to, like, reset.
Yeah, I
To the
get you.
point where it's like,
She would be
"Ugh."
engaged and couldn't disconnect, I get you, yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. Uh, so let's say, what do we wanna say next? Oh, if you'd like to support this podcast, uh,
Yes.
like, comment, subscribe on iTunes and Spotify. The video version of the podcast is now available on Spotify, which is really cool. We also have a Patreon at patreon.com/getoffset. For as little as $5 a month, you get access to our Discord server. I know some Discord servers can be pretty overwhelming. Ours is a little bit more laid back, I think,
Yeah.
because it's Patreon only. But
Mhm,
it gives you exclusive access to folk like me and Joe.
mhm. Yep.
And I respond a lot faster there.
Yes, I'm more active on Discords and stuff like that, so yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's easier. I'm bad at
Mhm.
Instagram messages. and
Yeah, I think I'm
don't like
decent
them.
at it. I think the one that I'm bad at is the TikTok ones. Like,
Oh
I'm
god, TikTok messages, yeah.
yeah. I am so bad at that. Like, I'll go out and I'll obviously be more on Instagram because I have a lot, yeah, I guess more people there to engage with. Whereas TikTok, my kind of format or things that I do aren't as made for TikTok. So as
Mhm,
far as like engagement there, like I'll have people send me videos and stuff like that, but I tend to get more in the engaging half of Instagram because it's more of an artist platform since they've gone
yeah.
back to the way they used to be. Thank God.
Mhm.
In some aspects.
And monetized reels, although I actually
There's
do
been
have a
issues with
monetized
that.
reels. It
Yeah.
hasn't been updating, but
Mm.
I'm getting money. You know, it's not much money for those who are curious. It's like $50.
No, I can't I am not anywhere near close to being monetized on any platform, so everything that I do, it's
Well,
yeah, it
yeah,
takes
you'll get
time.
there.
Yeah, it'll
It's a
take time.
grind. It's a
Yep,
grind. So, your support,
crawling.
everybody, your
It
support
is.
on
Support.
Patreon. If you're watching this premiere, you can super chat or do like a sticker or something to send us some money. Um,
It helps.
and we have merch at getallsetpodcast.com/shop. But the best way to support us, and my favorite way, is to like, comment, subscribe, leave a review on iTunes. It means a lot and it really helps the podcast get in front of more people, which I think is important.
It
Growth.
is. Yes.
Growth.
Sharing
Yeah.
is caring.
Sharing is caring. So what's new with you, Joe?
Oh, well, what's new with me is this coming week I'm going to start on the next demo. So I will start to lay the groundwork and do the storyboard for that. And with the new character that I am going to be using, which I'm going to be using my cat Figaro. As you know, he sometimes meows and tries to be a part of this podcast in many
He
other
does.
forms. He is very flamboyant and, wants to be a part of the conversation. I made a animated character for him. So I can pretty much demo anything, even pedals with just text as art, any other kind of gear, guitars, whatever. And that's kind of a character that allows me that freedom. So the best pedal I thought that would be great to do that would be probably the Big Ear Pedals Albie
Oh
because
yeah.
Bert cat tuxedo cat themed and that's what Figaro is. So that would probably be the best way to kind of introduce him in a way that's kind of cat themed. And of course, I appreciate Grant and Karen and
Oh
like what they
yeah.
do.
Love
Yeah.
them.
So again, like that, if when I choose pedals, it's more or less I struggled maybe for about a week. Like, what do I want to do? Like, and I thought, you know what? Just look at my shelf. What do I have already? What do I really feel inspired or that I would really have fun doing versus like whatever's new or next? Because I look at my board, I'm like, I'm okay for now. I have pedals I would like, but I'm also in a buying freeze. So regarding that, okay, what's on my shelf now? What would
Oh
be fun to explore? And again, it's not like a paid promotion. Like it's on my shelf. Like that's it makes it easier if I'm into whatever the pedal or subject is. If I'm not
yeah.
into it, yeah, I'm not going to put out the best thing possible. So it will take
Mm-hmm.
me time to go, you know what, that I think that'll work best. So yeah, this week I'll start with the storyboarding and trying to plan things that I already have a few good ideas regarding that. So far,
Good.
that's what's going on.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, when I started the demo channel, it was mostly with pedals that
Of
I
course,
owned and with which I was familiar, and I think that really helped me churn out a lot of content faster.
yeah,
And as as I get new pedals, you or gear at all, you have to spend time and
you have
learn
to
it, and
learn it. Yeah,
it can take a while. And though my kind of what's new is I did my first demo on a synthesizer. Get that quick down. I got the JX08 from Perfect Circuit.
it's awesome.
So this is one of the Roland boutique synths. They also sent me the little keyboard
No, I
for
definitely
it.
want to play
So
with one of those. Yeah,
yeah, the keyboard's not necessary though because you can hit all the notes
by
here.
itself. Yeah,
Yeah, so it's it's been really fun. Thank you again, Perfect Circuit, for the JX08 and the K25M keyboard. Huge fan of it. Please check out the demo, y'all, if you haven't already. I'm really proud of it. It took a while to do because I've never used a synth before. So, just being able to have some time with it, Perfect Circuit was really patient with me, which I really appreciated. Like, they sent me this in early June, and
Hmm.
it took me a while.
No, I
Um,
mean, it's completely new, it's gonna take you time,
yeah.
you at least wanna be a little bit comfortable when you're doing things like a demo.
Yeah, exactly,
Mhm.
because, you don't wanna be too wrong about too many things.
I
I
know.
find most demos, I really think there's mistakes in a lot of them.
Oh, yeah, there's
Um,
always mistakes.
yeah, I mean, I misspeak.
Yep.
Sometimes I'll say the opposite of what I mean.
Or
Or
I'll trip up the words, and I'm just
no.
like, "You know what? Leave it."
Yeah, yeah. So, you do your best to be as accurate as
Yeah,
possible, but
that's human.
sometimes
Yeah,
yeah, you're a person, and,
I'm not a
like,
machine.
this is so new,
Yeah.
and I just wanted to do something a little bit more interesting with it, because almost all the demos for it, like, there were a couple
Mm.
that actually went through the features, most of those were extremely long. Most of the
Yeah.
demos were just people, like, playing through each patch. I'm like,
That
okay."
doesn't help. Yeah, like, that doesn't yeah, I've done that too. Like, if it's a
Yeah.
pedal I already have, I'll watch their other demos, and I was like, "Okay, in watching this, what do they miss, and what could I do that is different from what they did,
Mhm.
but makes it accessible for someone like me?" Because that's always
Yeah.
how I think about it. There's someone else out there like me. What would they appreciate knowing about this? And I let that be the North Star usually.
Mhm. Because you don't wanna do things that people have
No.
already
No, I don't wanna
done.
copy anyone, and everyone
No.
is unique. No way.
Everyone is unique and they have
Yeah.
different levels of, playing skills.
Mhm.
Uh, Mary, you sent me a video, that Mary Spender released this week. You wanna
I
talk about
love
it?
Yeah, I love Mary. I love her insight. She has a YouTube channel if you don't know, Mary Spender. She does YouTube videos that kind of give you the background of being a musician, obviously in an industry, and also as a YouTube personality or content creator. And the one that she did recently was about YouTube musicians and whether because they don't play out or they never have play live, and the fact that they record themselves have multiple takes, are they frauds, or does that take away from their musicianship? And she had like an 8-minute video or so going through the process of speaking about that, and for me it was really insightful as someone that I do majority of demos or music where I'm in my home doing it. I mean,
Mhm.
and the different types of musicians, she said there was 3 types of YouTube musicians that she went through, the process of stage fright, what the difference, because there is a difference between playing live and of course playing in your home. And we can discuss some of those that she talked about. But what my takeaway thought, I thought it really was insightful in a positive conversation regarding YouTube musicians or demo artists, if you will. That it's all really valid. It's, everybody's going to there's going to be mistakes whether you play out or whether you play your home. Like, there are going to be mistakes. It's how you handle it live, which is the difference of if you're at home, you kind of have to be almost perfect. Like, the pressure is even higher on YouTube, and doing video recording, because that is going to be played over and over. Like, that is like a delay pedal in which
Yeah.
you la la la
Yeah. Just doing it.
there's that mistake, and
Yeah.
like it's always going to be there. I have, even in like my demos, there is things that I've let go, that I know it's something that I couldn't record again. It was something that happened, and I had to be okay with it. But anytime I watch it, I know no one else does, but
Yeah, they
I will always know.
honestly, they might. Honestly, they
Or
might.
yes,
Is
because
the
that was the other
thing.
thing. Yeah,
It's
as
like
far as
live
they're more
people
forgiving.
will.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, the thing is, live, people might notice it, but they'll move on from it really
yeah.
quickly. My friend Marina, she says that, people only remember the last note,
Hmm.
and most of the crowd only
It's the
remembers the
beginning and
last
the
note.
last. Yeah.
So, like, even if it's weak in the a little weak in the beginning, they'll be forgiving as long as it comes together in the end.
Yeah. Mhm.
And you as the musician, like, you know when you make mistakes and you get mad at yourself about it. I got
Mhm.
really mad during my last country music gig because I worked so hard on a solo,
Yep.
and just the way shit came together is I just couldn't fucking play it. And so what do? I lost my spot in the middle of the solo, and I got really mad. It was the end of the first set, which made me madder. But I had to pull myself together, and I
Say the
played
rest.
the second half relatively mistake free, which made me glad. But and then I put out a video on TikTok of me just playing that solo. And I'll be honest, it took me a couple takes because I wanted it to be perfect.
Yeah,
But
who
I did
cares?
it.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like live, it's dynamic and the crowd is there with you and they're forgiving and partially because they don't remember. But on YouTube, people will they're more judgmental.
Yeah.
Firstly,
There's a harsher criticism. Yes, and then also the
extremely.
in a live situation, there's less likely to be hecklers as opposed to online because you have people around you. If you want to be an asshole, somebody may give you consequences.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're online and you're typing like the most like atrocious fucking thing, you're like, ha ha ha, like you can't get me. I can say what the fuck I want with my keyboard courage.
Yeah. I mean,
And
if
no, no,
you
yeah.
if you're at one of my shows and you like yell at me that I suck, I'm gonna talk to you.
At the end, I'm gonna come for you afterwards. We're gonna have a
I'm gonna
conversation
come up
unless
and
you
be
leave
like,
early.
"Yeah, we're gonna have a conversation about how to treat people," or you're gonna get yelled at from, or I'm gonna say something
Or
from the stage,
security. Yeah.
yeah, I'm like, "Hey, you wanna come up here? You wanna
Yeah.
come up
Say that
here and
shit.
play a
Yeah.
solo by Mr. Telecaster himself?" No, that's why
Yeah.
most of the people who come up after a show, they're nice, and they spent money to be there, and
Mhm.
you would think it would be the opposite, that if people spend money to be there, they'll be less forgiving, but they came there to have a good experience. You're part of the
Of course.
experience. And for some reason on YouTube, people are more uh oh gosh, what's the word for feeling like you deserve everything? Like
You
they
deserve
feel like
what
they
you
deserve
get, yeah.
more. Yeah, so they're entitled is the word.
Mhm.
They're really a lot more entitled. And that's why it feels like things have to be perfect. And you don't really want mistakes on a record either.
No. No.
But they
And how many
since
takes does
yeah.
that take when you're recording in the studio or just for a record? There's
Yeah.
multiple takes, like,
Yeah.
people have this weird, strange, like, perfectionism, like, "Oh, yeah, this record is perfect," and it's like, "Do you know how many takes that took?" Like, it
Yeah.
wasn't the first try.
Even records that were recorded live often have dubs. People
Yeah.
talk about, "Oh, Purple Rain was recorded live." I'm like, "Yeah, but it was also heavily edited, and Prince went in and he redubbed parts of that solo, like Prince did,
Yeah.
because there was stuff he did live that he didn't like,
Mhm.
and most musicians aren't one-take wonders anymore. It used to
No.
be like you'd have a really, and that's another thing about, like, time and investment. You used to just, like, really rehearse the shit out of your band and go and record, or you hired these incredible session players who could do it in a quick number of takes. But you see George, like, singers even like George Jones, the greatest singer in country music history probably. You listen to those takes, and he had to take so many takes of a lot of these recordings, partially because he was wasted during them. And sometimes still the best take had like a weird vocal flub in it. They would pick the right notes, but they would like the best take they would get sometimes would be
Have the mistake
imperfect.
in it. Yeah, it would be a flaw.
Yeah, and people notice it 50 years later, 60 years later, 70 years later, and, it's so it's you don't there's that permanence of a mistake when it's
Yep.
recorded versus when it's not.
Mhm. So the intensity and the pressure is on a little bit higher when it comes to recording things and you care more and it does get rather stressful. I mean, in both instances there's still stage fright or there's both still the anxiety and fear that's
I mean,
associated
yeah,
with performing. Yeah, that doesn't
I
go
get
away.
I get mad when I film myself and have mistakes. I used to not
Me
edit
too.
out I used to not edit out my mistakes a lot,
Hmm.
and now I edit them out more just because I got really tired of, and I still get tired of the comments where people are like, "Oh, you made a mistake while you were, like, casually walking through this pedal." I'm like, "Let me turn this, da, 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 let me turn this. Oh, that's the wrong chord."
Oh yeah, because we have to
People
be
they're
perfect.
weird.
We have to be a machine. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
weird.
It is weird because, especially even if you're trying to go for that sort of organic feel, if
Hmm.
it's not live, it's just less forgiving.
No, totally. And again, like I was saying in regards to doing live, even like live streaming, I mean, I've had anxiety while streaming because something will mess up. Like I'd be messing with the gain staging at one point on a stream, and nothing would start working. So it's like the inner monologue would just go super loud of like all these things that are going wrong, which is perfectly normal because even at the level of like where I am, where you are, even like I would say maybe Amy Mann. I've listened to one of her podcasts that she did before the pandemic called The Art of Process. And even at their level, they fuck up. She'll
Yeah.
be playing a set, she'll blank because of anxiety or something will come about and she'll have to
No.
navigate through it. She watched someone else playing and she noticed that he made a mistake. She was like, "Oh." And that was kind of like a aha moment because she realized, "Oh, they all do it too. It's not just me. Like they just kept playing and playing through it. I
Yeah.
noticed it, but they just kept going."
And you gotta remember that a lot of the people who notice your mistakes, it's usually the musicians who really notice them, and they're the ones
Yeah.
who don't give a shit.
No. They
If you're
understand.
real,
Yeah.
if you're a real
It'll
one.
happen.
You know, it's like Kathy Valentine said in her book that she never got sexism, like really bad sexism from real musicians, that most of the other people who were real musicians in the scene were very welcoming of her
And
and other
forgiving.
women. And that's the thing. I think musicians are more forgiving to other musicians, like, "Oh, yep, I would have done that too," or, "Oh, yep, I've been
Yep.
there."
I've been
Instead of
there.
like,
Yep.
"Oh, what a fucking fraud. Oh, you should
Yeah.
learn how to play guitar before you go on stage." Like, no, nobody's ever said that.
No. I
If
mean,
you're not an asshole.
yeah, yeah. I mean, again, like whenever any of the comments online, I think for the most part, my brain is worse than anything I think that anyone comment wise has like
Yeah.
laid. Like anytime like I'm kind of doing a recording, I usually have like the inner monologues that kind of go like this. You just made a mistake. Even though you rehearsed all this time, it doesn't matter. They will know that you play the same line every time. They know you're a fraud. Why do you bother? You suck. You're not a real musician. You're just a clown in front of a camera.
And that the thing is that's not true. Like,
No.
and another thing Mary talks about is, there obviously there are different types of musicians. There are musicians who play live,
Hmm.
and there are different people from the session musicians. My friend Maurice, he was a touring musician with Megan Trainor. I don't think he was ever on one of her records. So it's a different type of playing. It's a different type of musician, and they're not like the person who goes on tour isn't always the person who records in the studio. We
No.
talked about that in the episode about Demi Lovato and Nita.
Nita, yeah.
Um, that
Live is different than the
it's
studio. I
different.
mean, Nita's being is allowed to basically do her own kind of solo kind of stuff at times on stage. Like that's
Yeah, and it's just different. It's just a different
Mhm.
kind of playing. It's a different kind of rehearsing because you are rehearsing more for perfection and high pressure. And it's not always anxiety that makes you mess up on stage. Sometimes you just zone out. Sometimes you're
Yeah.
really calm and you're just really into it and you forget about a
Oh, shit.
change that you all decided on.
Yep.
Maybe you're playing, and one thing that happens a lot is in the types of gigging I've done,
Mhm.
frankly, the singer messes up. The singer makes a transition in a weird spot, and then
Yep.
everyone else has to
I've had
follow the
to
singer.
Yep. I've had to do that.
And yeah, and then maybe if you just like weren't paying close attention or weren't expecting it, maybe some people can recover from it a little bit better than others. But if you've like gone through it, and then suddenly the singer decides to call an audible or
Yeah.
just forgets, and
Yeah,
you're kind of
I've
left
had that.
high and dry. But I do both. I do live and I do demos. I sort of prefer playing live. I like playing live more than I like filming the demos, partially because the feedback I get for my work is more positive. And
Mhm.
I shouldn't say I just do it for the feedback, but it is discouraging when people can be so mean
Of
because you're
course.
just especially when the purpose of like the demo stuff, it's often to be casual. Sometimes it's not. But, like, those recorded performances, yeah, they have to be perfect. Do
Yeah.
you want someone, like, to make a GIF or, like, a small, like, looping video of, like, when you hit the note wrong? No, you want
No.
it to be perfect, just like you want your record to be relatively perfect.
Yeah.
You want if there are mistakes, sometimes mistakes happen for
Yeah.
the
That's
better.
they do happen, yeah.
Like, I wrote a whole article for Reverb about mistakes in the studio that made the songs better.
Yeah.
Um,
Sometimes
so
the flaw is the hook. Like, it's
sometimes it's
crazy.
some yeah, sometimes it's what
Yeah.
makes it interesting.
Mhm.
With Prince, there's one song, "Forever in My Life," where the engineer, Susan Rogers, she just mis-synced the tape, and so the background vocals were supposed to follow the main vocals, "There comes a time, and there comes a time," but the background vocals were coming before the lead line. It was a
Mm.
mistake. Prince loved it, and it's one of the more memorable things about that beautiful, beautiful song. And,
Yeah.
yeah, so, mistakes, people sweat
Yeah.
them a lot. I think the people who sweat them the most are I would say, like, that's, like, not being a real musician.
No, I
It's
don't think so either. Honestly, and again, going back to the live situation of when like a singer mess up and you're the rest of the band, it's the key point of like when the other musicians look at each other like, okay, what are we doing like as a team? Because then you have to, if they sing a prior verse, you're like, okay, we now have to extend and play a little bit longer or figure it out on the flub. And it's that whole look back and forth at each other
yeah.
like, shit.
That instant communication that just comes with
Yep,
practice,
it
the more
does.
you play with a band, the more
Mhm.
you can just, like, shoot somebody a look and have,
Look,
like, a
yep,
whole ass conversation with
yep,
them.
with just the look.
Yeah, it's always pretty fun too.
Yeah, I do,
Just,
I
like,
love
look at
that.
somebody and be like, "Oh, yep, this is what we're doing
Yep,
now."
this is what's happening,
Yeah,
yeah, so I totally understand that, and even for me, like, I I like any opportunity that I get to play live because as far as whenever this opportunity comes, I'm like, "Yeah, that'd be great," but at the same time, most of my time or most of my work has been, well, here, even, doing the demos thing or recording music myself or remotely with other musicians online that don't live where I am and sending tracks back
yeah,
and forth, and I'm comfortable in doing this, but if I get the chance to play out, like, I like that experience too, but I'm
yeah.
most comfortable, I guess, here just because it's in my own space, like, it's I'm surrounded by things I like, so yeah, for the most part.
Yeah, and, like, you and I were talking, and I said, I'm not really
Mhm.
comfortable with a set of songs until it's the 2nd, 3rd, 4th
Yeah.
gig with those, and I don't always get that opportunity.
No, and it's
So, like, then
frustrating. It's so frustrating.
yeah, like, the first year I did the Women in Country series, we had 2 performances. It was a double bill, double header kinda thing.
Yeah,
So,
I
we
remember.
had an early show and an evening show, and then it changed to just 1 show this year, and I was like it made, obviously, my day shorter,
Yeah.
but I always felt more rehearsed, and I felt better the 2nd performance. The matinee felt like a warm-up.
Yeah.
So to lose that is also kind of it honestly, it made it a little less fun for me because
Yeah,
I
about
I didn't
same.
get that extra, like, rehearsal feeling, like, jitters and stuff. That's why there are matinee rehearsals, dress rehearsals for performers of all kinds. Otherwise, you don't have as much time to get, like, reacclimated with something, and it feels that way in recording too, like, do people expect the first take to be the take? Like, is why do people think it's cheating to take multiple takes or even comp together different parts of a take when it happens on every record? Shit, it
Yeah.
happens on Austin City Limits. If you think that's live, I got a bridge in Brooklyn, I should tell you.
Hope it's a fair price.
Oh, no, it's not, it's
No.
really expensive. I'm really gonna
You're
gouge
gonna
you.
really hike that up. You're like,
Yeah,
"Oh."
inflate no, no.
But yeah, even in my case, the conversation that we had, it went from being like one gig, and I was practicing like 6, 7 hours a day. And again, it was knowing music in a short span of time, which I wasn't accustomed to, and half of it being originals in a short span of time with a gig coming up the following weekend. And I had been 2.5 or so years without really doing anything like that. And then after that gig came about, the following, they were like, you know what? The venue confirmed, but it was too late to do promotion. So we'll move it to December. And I'm just like, I have, any of the mistakes that I made, I now after practicing this whole second week, I don't have a redemption. Like,
And
I'm
you have
gonna
to
keep
probably gonna have to
practicing.
relearn them essentially is what's gonna
Yeah,
happen.
I'll keep doing it, obviously until that point, but it's just like, fuck. Like, it was kind of like
December?
a few days of being kind of like all that investment in time, and then like, okay, the second gig, I'll be warmed up enough to obviously I'll be more comfortable with the material, to feel like I can kind of thrive a little bit, but I didn't get that, so it was just like, fuck. I
I
I
mean, yeah,
wanted it.
totally. It really do be like that sometimes, you know?
Yeah, it is. It's the
I
truth of it.
learned I spent a lot of time learning some really hard songs for a friend, hoping that I
Yeah,
get 2 or 3 gigs out of it, and it ended
of
up being
course.
1, and it wasn't her fault, obviously,
No.
but, I came in knowing that it might just be 1 gig, it might be all 3, and then some of the other gigs, they just got canceled because of the venue.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm glad I learned those songs, and I felt really good about what I did. I also didn't push myself on some of the things. Um, I had my charts out. I had my notes out. I wasn't shy
Yep,
about being like, I
I
wanna
did too.
memorize everything because
Mhm.
memorization costs extra.
Yep.
Um, but it was and then there was the secondary solo in one of the songs. I was like, I don't want it. I let's just jam. I'm like, it was short notice. It was not like the shortest notice, but I'm like, I've put everything I have into making sure the bass elements of the song that
Yeah.
people are going to remember are good. I'm
Mhm.
not gonna. I'm not going to noodle and try to with no brain. I had no brain space left at that
No,
point.
at certain points where I had an issue where one of the songs we didn't rehearse as much that I kind of blanked at one point. I tried to, in those little spaces, kind to play a little bit closer to what was going on, so safely kind of filling the space, but
Yeah.
obviously not what we rehearsed, but anybody else wouldn't have known. You know what I mean?
No,
Like,
I'm
yeah.
sure.
Yeah, I play it safe. If there's something like either I don't play and I'll wait till I come back in, or I'm like, okay, well, I know enough to know what key it's in, so I can fill the space with something that sounds relatively
Yeah.
interesting, but is not going to obviously distract or put me out there too much
Yeah,
in the wrong
yeah.
way.
It's like, my friend Sean, we were talking about something, he's like,
Hmm.
"Yeah, those they're not the hardest songs for me, but they're hard enough that I can't just bullshit my way through the whole set."
Yeah. No.
Which, is fair, it's very fair,
Of course.
it's hard to do that. Yeah, and there can just be a lot of elements that
Hmm.
happen live, and, in the studio it's a very different environment.
It is.
There's this even in warmer studios, there's a sterility to it. You're not playing to anybody.
No.
I think singing in a studio environment or this kind of
It's kind of
environment,
sterile. Hmm.
it's weird. It's
Yeah.
weird not singing to anybody or not performing to anybody. You don't have that energy to kind of attach yourself to. Um, and it's just like the pressures of it are different. And,
Oh, there is.
everybody I know who posts like videos of themselves playing live, I know Fabi Reina has done this, Spencer from Charlie Bliss has done this. They post their video of them like getting it perfect, and then they post a
Hmm.
screenshot showing all the video takes on their phone.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I appreciate that vulnerability and honesty, really.
Yeah, it's just like, pull back the
It's the
curtains a
truth.
little bit.
Yeah,
And
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 that's
most of these people who complain, they I
no
doubt that
idea.
most of them could get perfect takes every time the
No,
first time.
no, they can't. I mean,
No.
in talking about the whole studio situation, near the end of 2020, I did some remote work with another musician for that project that I've mentioned. Beneath Velvet Skies, where we sent in a demo. We had to go into studio. I had to drive to Atlanta to go to this record studio to do this. And yeah, like it's me in a booth with a headset on in front of a mic, and they're playing it over and over again. And they're telling me to do things which are really outside. Like, they're like, okay, well, I need you to smile with your teeth while you're singing. Or I have to, like, when I'm about to sing, I have to stomp to like really engage like my core to like belt a little bit harder
Yeah.
than I was. That's not really like a natural thing that I was accustomed to doing. And
Mhm.
it was kind of like, okay, I guess you kind of give me a few takes to kind of get comfortable. They also didn't like that when I sing, I have a natural vibrato. They're like, with this, I want you to not do that. I was like, so, okay, on the spot, you want me to eliminate something that is naturally occurring to me for this song and try to sing in a way that doesn't engage like that kind of you know, muscular natural thing that I do. So that also was kind of weird to be in a situation where I had to then change the way I do things like on the spot, you know. But so yeah, it was kind of a weird experience and not like something like would be live, which would be a little bit more forgiving in the way that I would deliver something if it, you know, obviously plays towards the song and that's the style of music, but in a studio, they're going to be trying different things, things you're not going to be comfortable with sometimes, and also in
Mhm.
a way that can be sterile because it's taking away your feeling of, I usually sing it this way. I feel like it gives it character. And they're just like,
Yeah.
no, we don't want you to do that. And I'm like, shit.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard, like, really great songs that I feel like the vocal performances are just very sterile, and I know somebody
Yeah.
was in the studio being like, "Do less of that."
Yeah.
I like gritty vocal takes, especially from women, frankly.
Hmm.
I feel like there's a lot of pressure for women to have very angelic or operatic
Breathy. Yeah.
voices,
Very breathy.
breathy or
Yeah.
and angelic or operatic. Like,
Either or.
"Oh," and,
Soprano usually, like, I am
yeah.
not a soprano singer, and they always want that female singer that does these high belting, and I'm like, "No, I'm like an
A lot
alto."
of
Like,
people can't
I'm
do
as you
that.
can hear, my voice is pretty low, and even when I sing, it's a low register, even when I
Yeah.
belt.
Yeah, there are just, weird weird people think weird
The
things and
industry,
weird
yeah, with
preferences.
studio is just weird, yeah.
Yeah, there's not as much room for women who have imperfect voices as there is for men who have weak voices, frankly. I think Matt Berringer from The National, for example, I love his voice, I love the character of it.
Mhm.
I would never say he's a great singer, and, but that doesn't literally doesn't matter. I love the whole study, I
No.
love Craig Finn, nobody would call Craig Finn a great singer.
No, I
Most
mean,
people
if you
don't call David Berman a great singer, but they make up
no.
for it in character. Jimi Hendrix, not a great singer.
Oh,
Character,
no.
though. So much
Yeah.
color in their voices.
I mean, you
Made
would
it
also wanna ta
interesting.
the most extreme, I would say, in that aspect is, like, if you think about the Pogues, guy sound like he was shit-faced drunk, like, never on key or whatever, like, sounds
Well,
horrible,
it's
like
because he was, yeah.
it was, exactly, but it lent to the character of the music, so it was
Mhm.
that was the music, you came for that.
Sometimes the music matching the vocals is, important. It's very
Yeah.
important. It's like there was, I think it was, like, Elvis Costello, Marcus Mumford, Rhiannon Giddens, and Taylor from Dawes. They were all brought together to, add music to old Dylan lyrics, I think.
Mhm.
And I remember one of the criticism about the song that Taylor, Goldsmith, I think, picked was that his voice is too sincere for the lyrical content of the song. And I was like, he's got a
Yeah.
very sweet, sincere voice. This is true.
It wouldn't lend
So,
itself. Yeah, I get what you mean.
I mean, I'm not sure I agreed per se, but I mean, I understood where the criticism was coming from. Um, but yeah, you don't have to agree with it.
Yeah.
And one last thing I'll say about the difference between, like, YouTube musicians taking a bunch of takes to get a song right versus live musicians, that live musicians are well rehearsed because a lot of them play the songs night after night after night after night for years, some of them sometimes. So, like, by the end of a tour, even midway through, well, before you start, you've had weeks of rehearsals, potentially daily ones, depending on the size of the band. Or if it's your band, you play the same songs, you've been having weekly rehearsals for months. When you're doing a video live for YouTube, and this is my case a lot, I've literally just learned that song
Mhm.
or I've
Yeah.
just written it, and,
Just written
it's
it.
not
Yep.
yeah,
Me.
it's not something that's in my back pocket, it's not something that I have down pat because I've played it 100 times, I've probably played it like 15
Mhm.
tops. So that also is lends to, like, multiple takes because you need to get more well rehearsed with it, but you don't have time to spend, 3 weeks learning a song just to make a video. You never fucking
No.
have any content.
No, you have to basically do the thing to basically facilitate the vehicle, which is the demo channel. Like, you have to put things out. So to say, okay, I'm going to rehearse this for 3 weeks before, if I was talking with my friend who's heavily technical, he was like, no, you have to drill it for X amount of time, be perfect, and then record it. I was like, I have lost so much time there. uh,
Yeah.
Perfection isn't really what I'm going for. I am a person. So I try to,
No.
but no.
And something that people talk about sometimes is like CGI isn't cheaper than
No.
like actual real effects, but it is faster. It's a lot faster to CGI
Less
something
people
in
in some
than
ways. Yeah.
have what's it called when it's like a real physical like animatronic effect. But there's a specific word for that versus computer
Practical
generated.
effects
Practical
versus,
effects
yes.
versus
Mhm.
virtual effects. That's
Yeah.
thanks,
I
Joe.
I like practical, to be honest.
Everybody likes
I
practical,
love
and sometimes
practical.
practical is cheaper than CGI, but
Yeah.
it's so much slower.
Yes, there's so many more hours that the actor spends in the chair, like, yeah, I can understand. But also,
6
again,
hours
like,
sometimes.
yeah, I mean, you have in some instance, like, less people on some end regarding, like, CGI, but at the same time, like, yeah, you're spending money on people putting on all this makeup.
The same is true for recording music. Yeah, you can have somebody down there and make them drill it 15 times, 20 times, 30 times until they get a perfect take, or you can comp them together. Don't you always wanna comp them together? Like, "Hey, we got the first part, let's redo the verse."
Yeah.
Vocalists have been doing this for ages, punching people in is not new. It predates, computer, it predates digital recording. People were comping tracks together with tape using slicers,
Mhm.
and they were comping together takes mostly than, like, specific guitar solos sometimes, but it doesn't mean they weren't doing it. I mean, like I said, Prince literally did it. So and he was, not even a perfectionist in any way in the recording, but also was very technically good, technically proficient, played live a lot, and was just, a genius in both in terms of his musicality and, a physical genius the same way like LeBron James is. It's, the combination of those 2 things, and yet he still dubbed things sometimes.
Yeah, and even the performance, not only, uh, with doing these and recording various takes, it's still very a physical thing as much as live is.
Yeah.
I have health issues, so when I'm spending hours and it's like 3 a.m. and I'm still recording things and trying to do things, I'm tired, I
Mm,
don't feel well, even physically on my worst days, and the takes, I don't get them, and sometimes I have to be okay with that, like,
yeah.
and also, when you think about the live scenario, there's some musicians, and it was one of the 3 musician types that go on YouTube. One of them just doesn't wanna do the touring or the live performance because the physicality of it and the extreme, obviously, stage fright that they might get, that they don't wanna deal with that anymore, so they go to, obviously more of a controlled environment. I mean,
People
Adele
do that for their
pukes.
families too,
Yeah,
just
that
yeah,
too, just to be around their families. But yeah, like Adele pukes. I mean, like, there's people that have physical reactions to, like, being live and then don't want to experience that. I think,
yeah,
as far as, like, my dad is in a tribute band, like Aerosmith tribute band, and he always tells me, he's like, "Yeah, I puke before the show." Like, that, it's a very physical reaction to, trying to basically get out there and do the thing. Like, it
yeah,
does tax the body as well as
yeah.
when you're filming multiple times here inside. I mean, you're holding the guitar can get heavy over time. It's physical.
It's harder your fingers start to hurt, it's like if you do a bunch of
Yeah.
bass takes sometimes.
Yeah.
The lights get hot. My studio gets so
Mhm.
hot when it's hot outside because I don't have AC. It's south facing. I as of now, though I will be doing this soon, have, like, blackout curtains or anything.
Hmm.
So, like, I have, like, limited time frames of when I can even, like, do these types of
Record
recording.
and do. Yeah. I have time
Yeah, so
frames too.
sometimes but, like, going on tour, extremely physically taxing. I
Yeah.
don't care who
Nita
you
always talks
are.
about it. Yeah.
You can have, like, the red carpet, white glove treatment when you do, go on tour.
Yeah.
It's still hard. It's like you're up
It's hard
early,
on both
moving,
sides.
you
Yeah.
travel a lot of travel, you're probably not eating as good as you
You're eating
would
crap.
at
Yeah.
home. Because frankly, like, you're more likely to get food poisoning from a salad than a burger from McDonald's.
Hmm.
So the last thing you want is bad stomach problems while you're on tour.
Oh god,
You
no.
are it's har like, the back pain that truckers get from driving around, like, standing around, loading and
Yeah,
unloading, like,
you're sitting on a
it's
plane
not
for
for the faint
hours,
of
like,
heart. Yeah,
no.
in if you're lucky, even sitting on a plane for
Yeah,
hours,
if you're
a
lucky,
bus
yeah,
for 8, not knowing where you're gonna sleep, not knowing how you're gonna sleep. Sleep
of
problems are
course.
pretty major even with, like, the road crews, like, sometimes if you're, like, a hired gun, just knowing constantly that you could be replaced at any minute is really
Anytime, yeah.
emotionally
There
stressful for a lot of
again,
people.
there's that anxiety and that stress of that, like,
Yeah.
if I don't nail this one night, the intense pressure of like, "Hey, they could replace me, call in a guy next week and I'm gone." Like, the pressures
Yeah.
are on both ends. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, in live, you have the pressures that you have and the stress and physicality of it, but you also do when you're recording and doing this stuff too. I mean, they're both valid and they both have their own pros and cons. It doesn't
Yeah.
take away from the musicianship that's involved, whether you want to go out and do that and wreck your body or deal with all the high pressure stress, or you come home and kind of do that too, but at least hey,
Yeah.
afterwards you can sleep in your own bed.
Yeah. It's also easier to make money touring, so that is
Yeah,
another part of it.
of
But,
course.
like, studio musicians, like, you get to be closer to your family.
Mhm.
You get to sleep in your
Yeah.
bed most nights or,
Yep.
like or you're if you're flown out somewhere else to record, like, probably a decent hotel, but in the same place
Yeah, you want
for a
routine.
period of
Yeah.
time. You get
Mhm.
routine, and it's less taxing on the body. It's also harder work to get.
Mhm.
So, they're just trade-offs, but, if you are actually a musician with a modicum of, like, empathy and you're not a complete narcissist, you should be
Yeah.
able to understand that sometimes people make mistakes,
Yeah.
and if it takes them 10 takes to get, like, that video that they wanna get, that doesn't mean they're fake musicians.
No.
You're still playing it.
Music.
It's
Yeah.
just you're playing it multiple times just to get it down. And I do think that the thing that most of those people don't think about is that touring and live musicians generally have a very long time to get the set nail down. They still
Yeah.
fuck up.
Yeah, they still do.
Yeah. Meanwhile, if
Yeah.
you're doing a video, you probably pretty recently learned that song because
Mhm.
you're just trying to put out new, new, new,
New
new,
content.
new.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, like
So
you're
yeah,
doing it right then and there, like, "Hey, this sounds great, like, this will be great for this demo," like, that's about as fresh as it is sometimes. It's an improv thing you probably were curiously noodling one night before, and you're like, "Okay, that'll be good for this," and then there you
yeah,
go.
exactly. Well, that feels like a good
Yeah.
place for like I feel like I've gotten it out of my system. Is there anything else that you wanna say to kinda close it up?
I think for the most part, again, it goes back to all musicians are valid as long as whatever you hear sounds good. And I know that's subjective to most people,
Mhm.
what is good and what is not. Um, I think it's all for the good and it's all valid, whether
Yeah.
you feel more comfortable in front of your computer screen or whether you enjoy being out in front of a crowd. You are still a musician, even if you clock in a 9 to 5, or even if you are hopping on a jet to fly to Japan to play
Mhm.
something or in a recording studio. As long as it's all coming together for the act of creating art, music, facilitating some kind of process of creation, I think it's valid, honestly, and
Mhm.
I think everyone should allow them the kindness to appreciate that in each other and be less hard on each other in both settings because both those musicians and creators are working their ass off. Like this isn't something that oh yeah, it's I'm just doing it for, free shit or whatever. Like that doesn't exist. Like I'm still making a
It's not worth
demo.
it. It's not
No,
worth
like
it.
I am still working my fucking ass off. Like
Yeah.
I don't get shit cuz I have tits. Like that just doesn't it's work, like and I think we should really appreciate a lot of the content and music that people are putting out there in both settings.
Yeah. Sure. I completely agree. Thanks so much for putting it like that. Just be nicer to each other, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, yeah, I know, the world is
Uh,
going to shit. Please,
yeah,
just fucking be nice to each other, like,
be
be
nice.
excellent to each other. Let's
Yeah. Let's Bill and Ted it.
Yep.
Uh, so everybody out there, again, please like, comment, subscribe, leave a review on iTunes. Check us out at patreon.com/getoffset. Check out Joe's channel, Pedal
Pedal
Playhouse.
Playhouse.
You're already here, Get Offset, probably. But yeah, everybody out there, thanks for watching.
Thanks for understanding.